Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb Finch, and I'm the Deputy Incident Commander, as well as previous Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1.
Hi, my name is Jason Coyle. I am one of the Operations Section Chiefs for Team 1.
In the effort to continue pursuing continuing education regarding the best practices for operational briefings and planning briefings for both field operations and planning operations, to tag on to our videos from previously when we talked about divisions briefing to task purpose in state, we felt it would be great to come together and talk about what is the best practices for those types of briefings.
The way we learned was painful, and it was more based on the consequence of what we did wrong. So we're just trying to give you all a leg up and give you some ideas of what to do right and some examples of what ineffective looks like, because when you see it, you'll probably not want to replicate it.
Yeah, exactly. And in our experience, every ops chief over time develops their style of briefing for the various meetings. And if we can help you build that style, tailor that style to what looks right, what doesn't look right, the purpose of who you're briefing to in the audience, we feel that it will definitely make you a better operations section chief, as well as just helping your day job and life in general.
That's true. I'm also the assistant chief for Sedona Fire, and there are certainly a lot of skills on briefing and media presentations that I've learned here that when it happens less frequently at work, I'm more prepared for it.
Attributes of an effective and successful operations chief include commander's presence. Individuals who project authority, confidence, and leadership through their demeanor. Do those under your leadership, those that watch and observe your every move, listen to your every word? Ponder that and think about that as we go through these lessons that we're going to talk about when it comes to your operational briefing. An operations section chief should also be a visionary. Resources need to know that you are the leader and you're leading them to accomplish the objectives and working through the problems. As you project your commander's presence and your vision through your briefings, are your resources that you're in command of and charge of feeling confident in what I just described, as well as your leader's intent, which will need to be clear and concise communication from a leader that outlines the objectives, the purpose, and that desired end state for the specific task. I think if you keep those in mind, that'll be really important, and you'll be successful as we go through this.
Yeah, Caleb, I agree. And I would also add that having a vision doesn't mean that you created that vision in a vacuum. It means that you created space for everyone to contribute to the plan, especially those people out there doing the work, and that plan is a amalgamation of all of the different inputs. It needs to be congruent, but it certainly doesn't need to be your plan, and it has to be able to be iterated on. So don't become pregnant with that plan. Just make sure it's a good one.
And additionally, closing out for myself here, there's a book I read some years ago that was pretty helpful in understanding how to get a message across to your audience. And it was Get to the Point and Sharpen Your Message and Make Your Words Matter by Joel Schwartzberg. That book was very successful in helping me understand sharpening that message for the audience, whether you're in a planning meeting or an operational briefing. And though I had briefed many times, getting up to that book just helped me refine that process, and it continues to do so. So continuing education is extremely important in these roles and the role that you have.
Agreed. Hey, so if we want to be effective in a briefing, what do we need to do?
Okay, so briefings should be less than 20 minutes, definitely less than 20 minutes. You want to remain focused. You want to make sure you're aligned. Understand the points that you want to get across, how they're going to be conveyed, and who your audience is. Additionally, visual aids are helpful. Maps, incident objectives. Think about the message that you're going to share prior to you getting up to the podium or up front before you share that message.
I have something about maps. So if you're out in the audience and you have a big briefing map up there, odds are they're not going to be able to see every little thing you're pointing at. So the map is a good tool, and it's kind of a crutch in some ways because it helps you point to it. But remember, you're briefing the audience, you're not briefing the map.
Correct. And you want to understand what's taken place in every division, but also what's taken place across the fire so that you don't have to keep repeating or going back to the map, but you can talk to the actions, the activities, the strategy, the tactics, the needs for the current shift, as well as how that aligns with objectives, the values at risk for the current period, as well as the future periods.
Yeah, and I would add that those objectives, you relate them back to the values at risk, right? Because that's how people know why they're doing what they're doing.
Additionally, as a deputy, as an incident commander, during the first few operational shifts, we try to focus on making sure that the audience, the folks that are assigned to the fire, know what our objectives are, know what our values at risk, and why we're here, and why we need to do what we need to do. And so tie that into your operational briefings. Additionally, communicating general task, purpose, and end state relates objectives to the protection of the VARs, which we just discussed. Practicing prior to the briefings is very, very important. Think about your tone. Think about your confidence, your candidness. Think about the word choice that you have. You don't want to have a script prior going up to the point where you're briefing in front of the camera, but you want to exude that commander's presence. You're calm, you're confident, you understand. But when your resources walk away from the briefing, they know that you are the operations section chief for this incident. You're in charge, you care for them, and they're going to go out and achieve the objectives because of your presence and your leader's intent tied to the task, purpose, end state of each division.
Agreed. And I would also add that one more aspect of an effective briefing is that you acknowledge those interdivision dependencies. So if completing an activity on one division is crucial before they execute an action on the other, that's something that's important for you to relay in those briefings. And the reason is they're going to get all the minutia right in the breakouts. But unless you give them those interdependencies, then they're going to focus on their division-specific tasks, and they may not recognize how they are related or how they're dependent upon somebody completing something in a different division. Oh, man. So some of the ineffective things drags on. I'm sure everyone that's watching this has been in a morning briefing that has had a lengthy roll call, or it's 30 minutes in and you're tuned out. And we acknowledge that, and I think we should all acknowledge that. The other thing is that monotone or unclear speech. It was first thing in the morning. Some of us are only partway through our first cup of coffee. And if you come up there and have a flat affect and you speak in a monotone voice through the whole thing, it's going to be hard to keep your audience engaged.
Additionally, Jason, I think, in the mornings, folks are getting up at 5 o'clock. Pre-ops is at 5:30, and then briefing is at 0600. Sometimes it might take somebody more time to kind of get tuned up for that operational briefing. But as an ops chief, you have to get up every morning and tell yourself, I have to get up and speak, provide that leader's intent. I have a lot of people looking at me, and they're depending on me. So whatever you have to do to get yourself ready for that operational briefing, a variety of practice, whatever it takes, you got to make sure you're on point and you're spot on, you're concise, and you don't want to drag on. You don't want to lose your audience, and that's really important.
Yeah, agreed. The other thing is using the insider lingo, local place names, and things that aren't on the map. Because remember, you're trying to develop a common operating picture. So if you're using terminology that's not common to the group, they're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the vagueness, and we're going to cite some examples here in a little bit as we go through a couple of situations, but the vagueness of the words, the word choice that you may choose to use, if it doesn't articulate what their purpose is, then your resource is not going to walk away with that understanding. And I've always told division trainees at their division breakouts, you have one opportunity in the morning to lay out your leader's intent and your plan for the day. You can always catch people up later in the day, but you want to make sure your resources walk away with an understanding of the plan. And that applies to the operations section chief when you're giving that briefing, whether you're field ops or planning ops. And then remember, operational briefings should last, or morning briefings should last anywhere between 12, 14 minutes. So you got to make sure you get all this compact, concise, and effective.
Yeah, I agree. And you have the plan, and you also need to have the pivots, right? So it's important to acknowledge those up front, because if you just brief to what perfect looks like, if all your assumptions are correct and you don't let people know what the contingencies are, then when something doesn't go well, you're going to have to spend more time getting everyone aligned on what the new direction is. And so it's key to hit those ahead of time.
Yep, perfect.
You know, I wanted to also just add that when we go through these examples, we're going to be amplifying a lot of behaviors with the intent of making it maybe a little bit more entertaining, but also more obvious. And that is just part of our way of trying to deliver something that's interesting. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.